This is the die notch. The die block has a die clamp screw that will be tightened against the die notch when properly installed in the header. If the die uses a carbide insert, it will be pressed into the casing located in the die at this position. This is die packing. Die packing consists of various size shims that are the same outside diameter as the die. Notice that the die packing will have a hole in the center. The die packing is placed between the back of the die and the back plate located in the header to bring the face of the die flush with the die block. This is the die pin. The die pin may also be referred to as a knockout pin. The knockout pin is a hardened steel pin used to set the length of the headed blank and to eject the headed blank from the die. With some setups, you will have to insert a wafer into the header die. The purpose of the wafer is to capture or confine the flow of material during the heading operation. The wafer can be changed if it is broken or worn. Before installing the die into the header, be sure you check for the proper radius on the forming end of the die. This radius is critical if you are to produce high-quality parts. If you have any question about the radius on the die, notify your supervisor before you install the die into the header. This will save a lot of time and wasted effort. The cutaway graphic of a header die assembly will summarize the 7 components that you must become familiar with when working with the die assembly. The components are number 1, the die casing. Number 2, the die insert. Number 3, the die notch. Number 4, the die wafer. Number 5, the die packing. Six, the die pin or knockout pin. And 7, the radius on the forming end of the die. Whenever you are required to set up a new job on the cold header, be sure you clean all of the blanks from the previous job from the heading area, discharge chute, and from around the base of the machine. Good cleaning practice will prevent damage to you and the machine. To set up a new job in the cold header, you may need to change the header die. To change the header die, back off the heading die clamp screw several turns. You may use the manual knockout at the front of the header to free the die from the die block. As you tap the back of the die with the lever, it will start to come out of the die block. The heading die can now be pulled from the die block. Whenever you remove a header die from the machine, you should wipe the die clean. In addition, be sure the die block and machine area are wiped clean of dirt and excessive grease. Before installing the new die, measure the die for the old job and the die for the new job. The difference in the length of the dies will determine the amount of packing that will have to be added or removed to bring the die flush with the face of the die block. If the new die is shorter than the old die, additional packing will have to be added. If the new die is longer, packing will have to be removed. This is a good procedure to follow, as the length of the dies are not always the same. If a pre-cut knockout pin is provided, you can slide it through the packing and header die. Be sure to dip the knockout pin in lubricating oil before you slide it into the header die assembly. If a knockout pin is not pre-cut, you will have to make one out of the correct diameter tool steel. Measure the combined length of the die and any required packing to determine the knockout pin length. The knockout pin must be long enough to be flush with the front of the die when pushed forward. The pin must be square on both ends when cut to length. The end of the pin located by the packing must be peened, as seen here. After peening, the end must be square and flat. If the header die will not fit in the die block, it may have to be ground slightly. Never grind the outside diameter with an emery wheel. Send the die to the tool room to be ground or notify your supervisor. You are now ready to mount the header die assembly into the machine. Install the header die and knockout pin assembly. The header die may have to be rotated to seat the clamp screw against the die notch. Snug the die clamp screw, but do not fully tighten at this time. Jog the header through a cycle to be sure the die is not pushed forward and that the knockout pin is pushed forward in the die. Be sure the knockout pin is flush with the front of the header die. If the pin sticks out beyond the die, it is too long and will have to be shortened. Once you have determined the knockout pin is the correct length, you can tighten down the die clamp screw. This portion of the television training tape will show you the correct adjustment of the knockout mechanism. The purpose of the knockout mechanism is to perform two basic functions. One function of the knockout mechanism is to provide the movement of the die knockout pin to clear the headed blank from the header die.